Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this discussion about Native American colonization, historical terminology, and the modern use of words like colonizer. Today's presentation is not about attacking individuals or dismissing historical suffering. Instead, this discussion explores how language evolves, how historical systems affected Indigenous peoples, and why broad modern labels can sometimes oversimplify very complicated histories. We'll discuss what colonization actually was, how Indigenous communities experienced it, the role of European empires, the difference between historical systems and modern individuals, and why respectful, historically accurate conversations matter. Colonization refers to a process where one political power expands into another region and establishes control. Historically, colonization has occurred all over the world for thousands of years. Roman expansion into Europe, Mongol conquests, Islamic Caliphate expansion, Viking settlements, African empires, Asian imperial systems, and European colonial expansion into the Americas. In the context of Native American history, colonization primarily refers to European settlement and imperial control beginning after 1492. This process dramatically changed Indigenous societies through disease, warfare, forced migration, religious conversion efforts, trade disruption, and political restructuring. One major misconception is that North America was empty wilderness before Europeans arrived. In reality, Indigenous civilizations were incredibly diverse and sophisticated. Examples include the Powhatan Confederacy in Virginia, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississippian cultures, the Pueblo peoples, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole nations, and countless others. Some Indigenous cities were larger than European cities of the same era. Native America was not culturally uniform. Tribes had distinct governments, military alliances, spiritual systems, economies, and territorial conflicts. Understanding this complexity is important because colonization affected real civilizations, not abstract groups. The consequences of European colonization for native peoples were profound and devastating in many regions. Disease alone killed enormous numbers of Indigenous people, often before direct contact even occurred. Other impacts included military conflict, land seizures, removal policies, broken treaties, and forced cultural assimilation. Events like the Trail of Tears, Bacon's Rebellion, King Philip's War, and westward expansion policies all reshaped Native communities dramatically. These historical realities are important to acknowledge honestly and respectfully. History is rarely simple. Different colonial powers operated differently. Spanish systems differed from English systems. French alliances differed from Dutch trade systems. Likewise, Indigenous nations also made strategic decisions, forming alliances, engaging in diplomacy, participating in trade, or fighting wars. Some native groups allied with Europeans against rival tribes. There were also many mixed communities and blended identities over time. Acknowledging complexity does not erase suffering. It simply helps us avoid oversimplified narratives. In modern discussions, the word colonizer is often used in political, activist, or social contexts. Sometimes it refers to historical systems, governments, or institutions. Other times it is directed toward modern individuals based solely on ancestry or ethnicity. This is where conversations become more complicated. Many people today had no role in historical colonization, come from immigrant families who arrived later, or themselves descend from oppressed groups. As a result, broad accusatory language can sometimes create defensiveness rather than productive discussion. Language shapes how people engage with history. There is a difference between discussing historical colonial systems and assigning moral guilt to modern individuals based solely on ancestry. Responsible historical discussion focuses on policies, governments, economics, warfare, and historical evidence. When conversations become purely accusatory, people often stop listening entirely. That does not help education, healing, or historical understanding. One reason these discussions can become emotionally complicated is because many Americans have deeply mixed ancestry. A single family tree may include Native ancestors, European settlers, enslaved African ancestors, later immigrants, and multiple cultural identities. Genealogy and DNA research often reveal histories that are far more layered than people expect. History is not always divided into simple good versus bad categories. It is absolutely possible to discuss colonial history honestly while still treating modern people respectfully. Responsible discussion means acknowledging suffering, listening to Native voices, examining evidence carefully, and avoiding rhetoric that reduces people to stereotypes or labels. The goal should be education and understanding, not hostility. Native American history is not only about the past. Native communities are still here today, preserving traditions, revitalizing languages, defending sovereignty, and contributing to modern scholarship and society. Modern Native issues can include land rights, healthcare access, cultural preservation, representation, and legal sovereignty. Understanding history responsibly helps create better conversations in the present. History is complicated because human beings are complicated. Colonization had devastating effects on many indigenous peoples, and those realities deserve honest recognition. At the same time, modern conversations benefit from nuance, context, and careful language rather than broad hostility or collective blame. We should strive to understand history deeply enough to discuss it responsibly, respectfully, and accurately. Thank you so much for joining me for this discussion about Native American colonization, historical interpretation, and modern language surrounding these topics. These conversations can be emotional and complicated, but thoughtful historical discussion matters. In future presentations, we'll continue exploring Native American genealogy, colonial American history, DNA and indigenous ancestry, historical records, tribal identity, and responsible genealogical research. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like, subscribe, follow, and share.